Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would open it to anyone, whoever is willing to take it first. My question would be, since we're talking about the marine fuels here, how can we bridge the gap between fuel production and maritime operations? Very, very, very basic to begin with. Anybody can take it up on them.
Hi, my name is Hautekiet. I'm the Chief Business and Transition Officer of the Port of Antwerp Bruges. And next to that, I'm also the Chairman of the Belgian Hydrogen Council, so niche counterpart, and also a member of Hydrogen Europe. There I'm in the board.
My name is Tietgen. I'm from the Danish Maritime Authority. And my experiences on marine fuel is that my focus is on the IMO, on the life cycle analysis parts there. So on the question of bridging the gap between the fuels or the production of the fuels and on the uptake of it, I will say from the Danish Maritime Authority,
Operations,
we had hoped that the net zero framework would have been able to kind of put that demand for these alternative or these green fuels in. Of course, was not the situation that we are, but we are still hopeful that when we get to October, that we'll be able to move forward with something that will be able to push this transition still.
Yes, I think that it's of course a major setback, but luckily the maritime business is also organized in a few hands worldwide of big companies. So I'm a strong believer that those companies will also at a certain moment team up and jump all of them and go for that transition which is coming to happen. You do see that already, the first signs. If you look, just follow the order book worldwide of all the vessels which are in order book, you clearly see a shift. LNG is all over the place, so we have drastic volumes also on bunkering volumes with us in Rotterdam and in Singapore on LNG. But also on the order book of the next 5 years, drastically you do see that you have hybrid vessels which are ordered now. 50% of them are methanol proof, and the other 50% is LNG proof. Ammonia is coming later in 5-6 years.
If I could bring in Mr. Soundararajan here and just continuing with that question and adding one more thing to it. I'm just coming back from Surbhi's presentation. She mentioned that our ports are also, there is lack of preparedness or inadequate preparedness in terms of tackling pollution. And why I'm asking about the pollution part is because now it has made international headlines. So if you could reflect on these two aspects that...
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Rajesh Soundararajan, Deputy Chairperson of Tietgen BOC Port. Just to give a brief background before answering your specific questions. Shipping industry is one of the hard to abate sectors as far as the global GHG emissions are concerned. And shipping industry alone contributes around 3% of the GHG emissions in the world. And whatever our policy goals are, our Maritime India vision, our Maritime Amrit Kal vision of 2047, and of course, everything is in alignment with the IMO Green Voyage 2050 and the net zero emission goals. And this, whatever in the shipping industry, ports have to play a very major role in the port-led decarbonization initiatives. So we at VOC Port, we are aiming towards that, and we are coming up with the best of the initiatives what we can to lead and also to be a front runner in all the port-led decarbonization activities. And as far as lack of preparedness, of course, that may have been a thing of the past, but I would say that Indian ports are now becoming better prepared for this fuel transition. And whatever the transition scenarios are there, and for all the scenarios, our Indian ports are becoming better prepared, both in terms of planning, in terms of infrastructure, and in terms of funding, and in terms of collaboration with all stakeholders as well. Coming to pollution, we have stringent, whatever the pollution control measures are required in the port, we have that. For example, we use the oil boom standard. I'm just giving an example. So whenever we handle crude, oil booms are used, and then so If there is any pollution also, if there is any incident also, immediately it's controlled and contained. So in terms of pollution as well, and of course for the other bulk cargo, we have our anti-dust suppression systems, automatic water sprinkler systems, and all this is also being coupled with the IoT now, so that everything will become AI-enabled and state-of-the-art pollution control measures that we'll put in place.
Right. Thank you. Just let me circle back to the panel again on the transition to green marine fuels and bring in Mr. Singh here. This transition to marine fuels requires storage, requires handling, requires bunkering. And also the shipping companies and ports and regulators, they must align on the safety standards that are supposed to be there. I wanted to understand your view on this and where can we go from here?
Good afternoon, Namaskar. My name is Ajay. I am currently heading the Maritime Advisory Section in DNV. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. Coming to your question, madam, I would say here different fuels will dominate different segments here. When we talk about marine fuels here, the top three which comes in mind when we talk about India is methanol, ammonia and hydrogen at the moment. Methanol looks like a very early deployment, has an advantage because it's easy to handle first of all, have a liquid properties when there's an ambient condition, and then it is also have a faster retrofits. Talking about ammonia, ammonia is again looks a very long-term decarbonization potential. However, it is difficult to handle, not easy to handle like what ammonia, methanol can be. Some statistics from DNV I would call at the moment we have 106 vessels currently operating on methanol and 350 vessels which are on order for methanol. Ammonia we have around 3 vessels operating in Europe, mostly are tugs, and around 46 vessels which are currently on order. And hydrogen we have around 5 vessels which are currently operating on hydrogen fuel. Again, most of them are in Europe. And 5 vessels which are on order at the moment. Again, most of them are in Europe and smaller vessels like tugs or offshore supply vessels. Coming on the regulation standards, safety part, I would say regulators play a very important role here. I would say this standards or regulations need to be developed through a collaboration between fuel suppliers, ship owners, ports, authorities. They have to come together and co-develop instead of doing a sequential way. So I would say, it is an industry practice to come together, not working in silos or working in a single pathway. We all have to come together, and platform like this is, I would say, is a positive way of talking to and understanding how can we support each other and collaborate. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And if I could bring Mr. Chaubey also here on the same.
I think this, the transition you're talking about, hard to await. Shipping itself has a major imperative, and especially looking at a global trade. The way, whether it's a global trade, maritime trade, or Indian maritime trade, almost like 90% of a global trade, whether in volume or value, is through ships. Currently, it's almost like 300 million tons of a fuel, ship fuel, which is being used now. Even if you replace 5% or 10% of it, you're looking at almost like 15 to 20 million tons of either green methanol or a green ammonia requirement. That's a scale of imperative which is needed. And that's where there is a phenomenal opportunity for India to play. And there has been a lot of development which have already happened, but there have been a green shipping draft policy which has come up now. I think 2 or 3 days ago it was circulated. Very transformative policy coming from the government side. First time completely looking at so many anchors and so many elements of this transition to happen. As far as preparedness of the ports are concerned, I think for ammonia handling, the facilities are anyhow there for a long time now. For methanol, other thing, 2 parts. One in terms of our dual engine retrofitting, which is important for the technology point of view. And also, how do you really create those bunkering facilities, which are very important. It takes its own time, 3 to 4 years to create those bunkering facilities. And when do you have at least first green corridor started working, whether between, let's say, from one of our port, either on the west coast or east coast to the Rotterdam. One single green corridor getting operationalized is almost like, it will have so much of a transformative effect on the system. So that's where the transition headed. I'll again say, India has a much larger role to play. not only in one part of energy economy or energy transition which has happened, but this entire maritime trade, India has a humongous opportunity to play.
And if I could bring in Tom also here for an international perspective on this subject.
Yeah, it's already a while that we are working on a bunkering program. I think 4 years ago we have identified a strategy which we call internally as the multi-fuel port. So it means that 2 platforms in Antwerp and in Zeebrugge, in fact we want to be ready to bunker whatever fuel an operator is asking for. LNG we have done already, it's happening on a daily basis almost in both ports. We have done a program on methanol which is finalized, so we did methanol for Maersk last year, and that went well. And now we are preparing to do, hopefully first quarter next year, to do an ammonia bunkering. It's easy said, it's difficult done, because of course we all know what's happened with those molecules and what the risks are. So it means that you need to look at different steps. You need really a risk-based spatial planning. So what is your dynamic bunkering map of the port? What do you allow where? Yeah, so that's already an exercise on itself. Then you have to look, of course, how do you organize your market entrance? Who is allowed to do bunkering? What are conditions? How do you license that? Then you come to terminal planning. What is the terminal readiness? How are the people skilled, trained? And then the last one, how do you audit that? So that's a full program where you have to go through for each of the different molecules. And I think we're almost there to do bunkering of every molecule, so ammonia to be the last one. And we learned by doing, because we have, in fact, we were the first one in the world that have developed for our own tugboat fleet all the different technologies. So we were pioneering in developing the first hydro tugboat in the world, then a methanol tugboat, then an electric-driven tugboat. For ammonia, we went to Japan because that existed already by NYK. And by learning all those things, we also learn how to bunker ourselves and what is the risk.
Right. You mentioned about the commodities, methanol and ammonia. I wanted to ask Mr. Singh, as you also mentioned, as far as ammonia is concerned, how will the regulators ensure that safety at the time of bunkering is important? It's because it is a very difficult molecular fuel to handle.
I would say people say ammonia is toxic. Indeed, it is toxic, but so as LPG or LNG or other conventional fuel it is as well. We don't have currently the bunkering guidelines for ammonia or methanol in India, which has to be come up from DG Shipping, which is, I am pretty sure that they must be working on it. Talking about ammonia, how you can have a safety, like DNV have systems like we have quantitative risk assessment, we have dispersion modeling, we have human factor analysis. When we study the bunkering systems to be in place in the port, these are some of the areas which is currently under evaluation and currently reading. I would say ammonia is, we don't say ammonia is unsafe. Systems which are currently not properly placed, which is creating it is unsafe. So in future, once you have better standardized or better regulatory bodies coming in picture to make it more uniform regulations, I believe this can be sorted out. So I don't see that ammonia is unsafe, but the systems need to be improved a bit.
But yeah. Can the ports hedge multiple fuels?
Ports should have smartly hedge the multiple fuels, I would say, but I would say it is not too risky to have multiple fuel support. The most riskiest part is to follow the single pathway. The port should not only look forward for single fuel bunkering. Instead of it, they should look forward for multiple fuel bunkering in future. They should plan their port areas accordingly. For example, they can have shared safety zones. They can have flexible bunkering interfaces. They can have safety zones to be separated and for different types of fuel to be handled. So I would say they need to smartly hedge the areas, or you can say different fuels which can help them in the future.
Right. We talked about the ports and how they can handle these multiple fuels, this transition, etc., and all the regulatory. I wanted to bring in Mr. Soundararajan here and talk about the shipping lines, another stakeholder here, and they also need infrastructure. They demand an infrastructure. How will that ecosystem be built, and should we wait for that ecosystem to be built and then bringing the expansion in the shipping lines, or can it work simultaneously?
As of now, if you see, around only 2% of the total vessels on sea, it's running on any type of alternative fuel. So the rest is all running on the conventional fuels as of now. And what will happen is that the scenarios will keep changing in this transition, because the scenario, it won't be just a single scenario. As of now, with the European regulations and whatever the penalties which will be imposed by 2030, for any vessel to not operate on either a e-fuel or an LNG, they'll have to face the maximum penalties. For a vessel in this current scenario, for a LNG vessel to operate in Europe and in the non-European side, so the LNG will be costly. It will be costlier to operate in Europe, and it will be slightly cheaper to operate in the rest of the places. So definitely for maybe another 5-10 years, one has to bank on LNG as well. And in this transition, of course, when the further order books are being delivered of the vessels, so one has to be ready for different scenarios and be ready for multiple fuel bunkering. And of course, this is easier said than done. And for this, there should be a proper collaboration with all the stakeholders, ports, shipping lines, and the fuel developers, and other people in the supply chain and in the value chain. So without these collaboration, it will be difficult for each and everyone to cross that price trajectory and to have absolute value for money. So it has to be a collaborative effort, and there has to be a proper collaboration between all the stakeholders for this.
Yes. You talked about collaboration. I want all of you to answer one by one, especially in terms of the ecosystem readiness, the port readiness. I remember many years ago when the government was planning EVs, the auto companies had, there were issues that when they're planning to come out with EVs, well, whether the ecosystem should be in place first or the car should come first. Basically, it has to go simultaneously. So I wanted to understand in terms of port readiness also in this sector, can this go hand in hand, or do we need some sort of ecosystem in place to be able to deliver?
I think when we talk about ecosystem, and we classically talk about from demand and supply point of view, I think it has to move simultaneously. It should not happen that you have a supply ecosystem in place and the demand ecosystem is not coming into serve. I think the port handling or the port handling capacities, they are not much of a concern from that angle. But the new green fuel which is being talked about, the facilities, technology associated with them, that is more important now. If you look at India, the same as I was talking about global maritime trade in India also, if you look at maritime trade, 95% in terms of volume, almost like 68 to 70% in terms of value. That's where the contribution comes. About 12 major port, almost like 200 plus non-major port, 11,000 kilometers of coastline. That's a phenomenal thing. The green shipping policy was talking about, it is trying to handle all those elements now. Not only green shipping, but the green fuel, green ports, green finance, green skilling. These are all the ecosystem. It takes time to build.
And how can you do it, how can you do it with all these challenges in place whatsoever? How can
it's
that
doable.
be done?
It's a larger a private-public partnership which come up in terms of a policy sense, policy direction which has come up. And when the signals become stable, I think everywhere the finance follows predictability. Then there is certainty and predictability, the finance automatically follows. There is no dearth of capital for the sector.
Right. I would want to hear from you as well, Mads and Tom. Basically, in terms of developing the ecosystem, the challenges whatsoever, and how that can be achieved.
Well, I think it's happening. I really think it's happening. If you do see that what we are doing worldwide, we come from maybe 300 potential projects in the past. Today we are talking about a handful of projects in the world which are ready to supply. But more than a handful are almost ready to supply. Yeah? That's on the supply side. Supply side in India, we are organizing ourselves in terms of which ports will have to be ready, how will we do that, how will we build transition lines. So on the supply side, we are taking the steps. On the offtake side, we are also taking the steps. So in Europe, the legislation on Red III transport will be implemented this year. And that will create the first volumes. Incentives in Germany order for steel sector will again create first volumes. So we are doing it step by step. It's not a big bang, all of a sudden the whole world will change. Right. No, we are building it up together.
Would you like to add something?
I would agree with Tom there, and I also think from the regulatory side that we are also trying to work together with both the suppliers, or at least get information from them, also to be able to develop regulations that actually are going to work for these new fuel types. But I think as they also need to develop simultaneously with both the production and the uptake of these fuels.
Right. And I have been asked by Nishaanth to wrap this up. So I would like all of you to go one by one and give your closing remarks as well for the road ahead.
For moving ahead, I would like to see at least in next 2 years one fully certified green fuel bunkering event happening. I'm pretty sure that VOC port or Kandla port or DPA port would be in the front runners to do that. Sure, thank you. And yes, and no MOUs, no roadmaps, a real scenario, real bunkering event, real ship, real fuel. That is something which I want to say from PowerPoint to the pilot presentation.
So in terms of ecosystem, we are one of the green hydrogen hubs identified by the ministry and the government. And we became the first port to produce, to have a pilot green hydrogen facility. And as Ajay was just mentioning, by this March will be the first port to have the pilot bunkering facility for green methanol. And the advantage what we are looking at is that, of course, Tuticorin port, if you see from the east-west international sea route, it's only around 150 nautical miles from the sea route. So that's a huge geographical advantage that we want to tap and capitalize. And also, in terms of access to the fuels also, we are looking forward to have cheaper access to fuels when compared to the other parts. And also with the ability to handle bigger vessels and having deeper drafts. So all this we want to put it in a package and capitalize on the latent potential whatever bunkering has to offer. And we are looking forward to becoming one of the front runners as far as the green fuel bunkering is concerned.
Very valid point.
I'll just add from a last question you asked, how can it be done? One great example is Antwerp Pope. I had a discussion with Tom last week only. I didn't know that I'll happen to meet him here. And the way they're taking each of those infrastructure step by step forward, I think that kind of a best practices, learning, sharing could be a good example for our ports also. We'll also be visiting certainly Antwerp Port to see that. Now to answer your question, I think the right time has come for us to move from ambition to execution. It's the right time that we move from intent to investment and trade really happening. And it's the right time that not to talk much about roadmap, it's a time to kick off the voice now. So that's how I'll put it.
Yeah, I go for two ambitions this year. One is that on the offtake, that RED 3 transport is implemented. It will create volumes. I'm a firm believer that India will be the source of the European market. I'm a firm believer of that. And I do hope on the Indian side that we can cooperate with several ports and projects of the know-how we have built up in the last years, how we can do bunkering in India.
And
One last comment.
to end it off here at the end, I think what I'm hoping for is that we actually are going to move along on the IMO LCA parts and actually getting a default emission value for these new alternative fuels, also to kind of set the standard for what are the fuel producers going to expect the international value is going to be, and if they already can see that they can be better. That's what I'm hoping that we can get done here in 2026.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, and all the best for your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nishaanth. Thank you, Kamya.
Thanks, Megha. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to request Mr. Bhalla on stage. And with Mr. Bhalla, may I also please request Mr. Sanjeev Sharma from GH2 Solar to felicitate our guests, please.